All right, really quick review. We created a idle animation, a player controller. We got a lot done with this guy. You can see he starts off in this animation state where he just does that. Generally, it'd be nicer to do a little bit longer one, but this is what we have from the internet. All right, so I'm going to close my platform or art pack here, and I'm going to go to my player here, and let's just cycle through these animations. So I'm just pushing the down arrow on my keyboard. So right off the bat from 1 all the way to, let's see, 1, I think 1 to 8. Actually, 0, no, 1, yeah, 1 all the way to 8 is my walk animation. So I'm going to select all of those so you can kind of see it here. That foot goes down, then it slowly passes, goes behind, and these two look like they sync up, like that foot starts to lift off the ground here. So I'm going to right click on that, and I'm going to go to create, and I'm going to do animation, and let's see, animation clip, and I'm going to call this animation clip walk, and I'm going to drag this in my anims folder. And I think the last one I made capital, so this one I'll make capital. And then in my animator here, I'm going to grab my walk animation and just drop it here. Now, what's cool is because this is connected to this animator component is connected to this guy right here. If I go to animation here and I change it from idle, you can see now I have the walk clip, and I can press play and I can see that update in the interface. It looks like, just going to kind of look at this for a second. Is that loop okay? Let's slow that down too. I'm going to go back to, I think I can actually just slow it down here if I push a 1 there. Let's see. No, I think, oh, that's the frame number. I think if I take the samples down to 6, maybe, is that, no, that's the sample frame. That's how many frames we have. Thought there was a way I could decrease the speed inside of here. Anyway, well, let's go back to our animator walking. I know I can set it, slow it down here. So if I make it 0.5 here, and I go back and I press play. Oh, that's only when it plays. Okay, anyway, back to here, walk. We want that to loop time. And now when I press play, it should go at half the speed that we were watching because I set it to 0.5. Oh, that's the idle. Okay, so let's go back to our animator here. Set this as default state just to test it. Looks pretty good. And it's going at half the speed. Maybe we'll go just a tad faster because we want our game to not be so boring. Yeah. Not a big fan of that animation. It almost looks like he's got some sort of like leg issue. But anyway, all right, I'm going to set back my idle state as default state. So as a refresher for some, and this could be new for others, is we're going to create a blend. So I'm going to right click on this idle and make a transition here. And now when I press play, you'll see that it goes from idle. It'll play through my idle animation. And then it'll play my walk animation. It'll loop there. If I want to, I can make a transition back. Let's just see that. So what it'll do is it'll play the entire 8 frames here and then these. And let's see, I might have to click on this again so you could see it. So you can see it played my idle and it just keeps looping back between walk and idle. So you might be like, well, that's cool, but what is there, like, how do I stop that? Well, you can click on here and we could do where on this little arrow down here. And what we'll do is we can make a condition. So I'm going to click on this and it says parameter does not exist. And that's why we have to go to parameters here to create a condition. And what I can say, for example, is I can just create a Boolean and I can call this walking. And notice that it's not checked on. So if I press play here, it's going to constantly loop through that idle. See that? Until I check this on, and then the character will start walking. And it didn't work this time because, sorry, I forgot to select the walking condition and say this condition where it switches between these only happens if this is true. So right now this Boolean or this box is not checked. So if I press play, it'll just stick in the idle mode. And then if I check this on, it'll play all the way through until it reaches walking. Now say you want it to interrupt, right? You want it to the second that this is checked on, I immediately go to walking. What I can do is I can turn off has exit time, and it'll no longer wait until this idle animation is done playing before it goes to walk. So let's press play and see that. So what you'll see is it's constantly looping. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to check this on when this blue line gets to about halfway, and you'll notice that it'll immediately cut to walk. See that? Because it no longer has an exit time. And this stuff will get this, that we through scripting or through code will trigger this walking condition. So how do we go from walking back to idle? Well, this should be set to false. And that means this isn't checked on. So what'll happen is if I press play now, right now this is set to false. But in order to satisfy this condition where it'll switch, I need to turn this on. And it'll automatically, once I uncheck, not automatically, but once I uncheck this, it'll go to idle. But I also, same as before, once I release the mouse, I want to set this to false. So I'm going to make sure there's no has exit time there. So it automatically goes back up to idle. It doesn't play through the whole walk animation. So go ahead and hit Control S to save that. All right, now something else I want to do is as my character falls into this pit, which it's just going to have this snow, it's kind of like he falls into the snow. I want him to be able to climb out. Now, we don't have that much animation here. The only thing we have is these 2 frames here, and this is going to represent climbing. So actually, maybe there's like 2 of these that could make it look like he's climbing. So maybe, you know, we'll do 8 and 9, and that'll represent climbing. So I'm going to select both of these. And what I can do is, let's see, drag these. I wonder if I drag them into the atoms folder together. No, that just created a copy. Okay, I'm going to right click on those, go to create, and then animation and animation clip. And I'm going to call this climbing. And this is going to be when our character needs to climb out of this little hole. So I'm going to grab this, drop it in there. And then I'm going to create another state that's a Boolean. And I'm going to call this is climbing. And now the reason for this is because you generally want to write like is running, is walking. It's just kind of like I think I wrote IC climbing here. It's, and then you want to double check whenever you make any changes that it remembered that. Just because a Boolean usually is something happening, yes or no. A Boolean is a true or false or a check mark. So let's go ahead and make that transition to climbing. What I would suggest is before I do all of this, before you watch me do all of this, do it yourself. See if you can remember how to do it. So you can pause the video and do that now. All right, so going from idle to climbing, we just want to say, hey, we are climbing. And that's true. And I want to turn off has exit time. And if we are not climbing, we want to set that to false. That means we are no longer climbing, we're going back to idle. So now we can test all of this. I'm going to hit Control S to save this. I'm going to press play. And let's do our pretty bad climbing animation. So I'm going to turn that on. So here's our character climbing. And the other thing is I want it to loop. So I'm going to select this climbing animation here. Let's make sure it's in our animation folder. I'm going to turn on loop time. Let's press play again. So we have an idle animation here. And then my character is climbing, which could be really fast, but at least it looks like he's climbing. And then we can go to walking. So the last thing I want to do is just tweak that climbing animation a little bit. So I'll do that in the animator, and I'll just set that to 0.5. So let's save all of this. Remember to always check stuff into version control once you're done with it. So I think that's good for now. I mean, we've got a pretty good animator, a little animation system here, and yeah, we're on our way to making a cool platformer.